to the Sonax Detailing Bay here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. And this is really a cool opportunity because I've got the Indianapolis 500 champion, Marcus Ericsson, here in the month of May, and we're gonna just have a conversation. We're gonna talk about, because I think a lot of people still really don't understand where you've come from, you know, the struggles in your career to get to this point. And so I want to have that conversation, have people understand who Marcus Ericsson is. Has it sunk in yet that you've won the Indy 500? Because like you have to think about, you've seen all the history both upstairs and now down here in the basement. You're part of that history now. You will never, as long as this building's standing here, you'll never not be known as an Indy 500 champion. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, it took a while, but I think after the off season and all the things I got to do, and you know, this year again coming into a new season, it's starting to be real in a way. But it's still like moments where you sort of pinch yourself and like, yeah, I did actually win that race, and like just the fact as well, what you touched on is that, you know, the history of this race and the fact that when you are a Indy 500 winner, you're gonna be that forever. It's like, you know, you win a lot of other big races in the world, but it's not the same thing. You know, this like Indy 500 Winners Club is so special and exclusive, and it's just, that's hard to grasp sometimes for me. Yeah.
So one of the things that seems to be always brought up about you, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you because it's frustrating from the outside sometimes to hear it. Yes, you bring sponsorship to your racing teams. What driver doesn't these days? You haven't always been a pay driver. Let's go back to the very origins of your career. Talk about the struggles that you had growing up, just dreaming of getting to a racing seat, regardless of Formula One, IndyCar, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, racing was never a natural choice for me or my, you know, as a kid growing up from Sweden. I was playing hockey since I was a kid. That was my big passion, and then I loved cars. And I don't come from a racing family. None in my family before me had anything to do with racing, so it wasn't something that was like obvious for me to do. But I kept bugging my dad. I wanted to try this go-kart place as a kid that was close by where I was growing up in Sweden, and eventually I think he was just tired of me telling him I wanted to go, so he gave me a chance to go there. I did a couple of runs in the go-kart and just loved it, and we kept going back there for a summer. And the guy who owned that place was a Swedish touring car driver called Fredrik Ekblom, and he was there one of the times. So like, oh my God, your son is so good, and sort of got my dad hooked into that. His son was actually really good at driving for some reason, so that's sort of how it all started. But for me, yeah, it was never like a natural thing to go racing. And then when we started with go-karts, all my go-kart career, my dad was my mechanic and, you know, driving me around all over Sweden, and then around in Europe. I remember many times we would drive from Sweden down to Italy, and it's like a 24 to 30 hour one-way drive to go down there. So we would go like on Wednesday or Thursday. My dad would drive, I would sit in the middle of like some van or something with the go-kart in the back, and we would drive down there, do the race, and then drive back. And I had to sit there and do schoolwork and stuff like that. So it was, you know, my dad was very, very important for my early career, for my whole career. But yeah, I have to thank him a lot for where I am today.
You mentioned Fredrik Ekblom, who raced IndyCars. Obviously, you know, in reading about your early career, Kenny Brack was a big part of it, who raced IndyCars. Did you think about IndyCars as a career, or growing up in Europe, obviously most kids, even here in the US, are thinking Formula One? What was the goal once you started racing?
So, like, I think from when I was a kid, my strongest memories is watching Formula One with my dad, watching Michael Schumacher win in the red Ferrari. That's like some of my strongest memories. But I also have memories from watching Kenny in IndyCar. I remember sitting late at nights, like Sunday night, Swedish time then, you know, watching IndyCar races. So already from very early, I had that sort of IndyCar in my head. So yes, growing up then doing racing, Formula One was sort of the goal. When I started to work with Kenny when I was 15, the project around me was to get the next Swedish driver to Formula One. So that was like the end goal per se, but always somewhere in my mind, back of my head, I had that sort of IndyCar interest with me all the way through my career, really.
So talk about your relationship with Kenny Brack, because that's interesting to hear that project, trying to get a Swedish driver into Formula One. Talk about your junior Formula career and how that kind of turbocharged it and actually got you, very close and eventually achieving that goal.
Yeah, so I did go-karts and was very successful in go-karts, won Swedish championships and Nordic championships, and was good internationally as well. So when I was 15, I'd won most things in go-karts, but I didn't really have any option to do cars or anything. We didn't really have any money or contacts or anything to do that as me and my family. So it was not really something I was thinking a lot about. But at that time, Kenny and another guy called Elg, they started a project where it was like next Swedish driver to Formula One. And what they did first was setting a group of investors and sponsors together to they got that group together first, and then they went out, when they had that setup established, they went out to look for the next thing in Swedish racing, and they picked out, I think we were 8 of us that they picked out in sort of between 15 and 17 years old or something, the sort of 8 best ones they could find in Sweden. And we did an extensive testing program, and we tested in, driving obviously, but also physical strength, mental strength. They simulated media interviews and sponsor pitches, and we had a lot of different things over a 6-month period. And then in the end of that, they were supposed to pick 2 drivers that they were gonna support with management and sponsorship and everything. But in the end of the 6 months, they only found one that they thought had what it takes and what they were looking for, and that was me. So that's sort of how it started, and that's when I got picked up by Kenny and Eje, who was then managing my career from that point.
How gratifying is that? I mean, that's got to be so incredible to not even have a single connection in racing, and then all of a sudden they're saying, you're our best hope for an entire country to get to Formula One. I mean, can you even describe what that feels like?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, as a kid, I don't think I understood it fully. I knew I got a big opportunity, but it was more just, was just awesome to be able to drive race cars. I got the chance to go over to the UK and we signed up to Formula BMW, which was a good junior championship at that time. And I think at that point I was just super excited about it. I didn't really feel like I had a pressure from it. I was just trying to enjoy it and take the opportunity. And I was very thankful to obviously get that opportunity, because in my when I was go-karting, I never had those, I had dreams, of course, but I knew it wasn't really realistic for me. So I never really let myself think too much about pursuing a racing career. I was more just enjoying go-karts, and then this happened, and I was like, oh my God, I have this opportunity now to actually try and become a professional racing driver and hopefully find my way to Formula One somehow.
And you did eventually find your way to Formula One, but the circumstances that you got there, or the circumstances you found yourself in, I can't imagine were ideal. You joined Caterham in 2014, and that team was really at that point dying. What was that like as a driver? You're a rookie in Formula One. This has been your entire life's goal up until this point. Every person who supported you to this point has gotten you to this point. You get there, and the team is in some ways in disarray. How difficult was that?
It was very tough, because obviously that season 2014 was incredible in many ways, because I reached this goal that I had, or dream that I had since I was a kid, and obviously something we worked from when I was 15 to 24. We worked almost, say, 8 years to try and get me to Formula One, and we achieved that goal, which was amazing. But yeah, like you said, the problem was that Caterham at that point was really in a bad shape financially, and it was, first of all, our car was very slow. It was very overweight, and I had Kamui Kobayashi as my teammate, who was super small and light, or is. So he had a big advantage there on the weight side. So it was very tough for me. I think I was 20 to 25 kilos overweight limit with my car, which was, it was a very tough season. Obviously always running in the back, and also knowing, I remember many times on Monday, Tuesday before a race, it was 50-50 we were going to actually go to the race or not, because the team might go bankrupt before the weekend. So it was every time I was speaking to my engineer in the race week, we were like, yeah, so are we racing this week? And they're like, yeah, we think we're racing, but we're not 100% sure. So it was a very tough season because of that. But still, you know, it was many ways also a dream. I remember that first Grand Prix in Melbourne in 2014, going out there on the grid and looking around and seeing Kimi Räikkönen, Fernando Alonso, Button, Hamilton, all these guys that I had been, you know, idols for me growing up, and that had been racing in Formula One for a long time. And to be just on the grid with them was just, that was the memory. That weekend is just very strongly in my memory.
So eventually it did fall apart. In fact, it fell apart before the end of the season. The team went bankrupt, and you guys didn't even go to the final couple of races. Was there a thought at that point, this might be it? This might have been a one-and-done deal?
Not really, because the situation in Caterham was what it was. During this, quite early in the season, my management started to work and you know, try and find out other opportunities in Formula One and see what other options there were there. So there was already conversations going during the season. So you know, we already had stuff in motion. And when eventually Caterham completely folded there before the end of the season, we had pretty much a deal done with Saber then for the following year. So I think I got announced with Saber the same weekend, which was Austin in 2014, which I believe was the first weekend I didn't race with Caterham when the team was gone. And then we announced that I'd signed with Saber the following year. So it was, you know, that was good because it gave me a chance. I felt like Caterham that year was just such a bad year. So I had no chance to really show what I could do. So it felt amazing to get an opportunity with a team like Saber to you know, kickstart my F1 career, let's say.
What was the contrast like when you got to Saber? Obviously, Saber is a team that has won so many big races throughout the decades. And you go from Caterham, which is one of the minnow teams in F1, one that went bankrupt before the end of the season, and you get to Saber. What was that like for you, and why did you pick Saber?
I don't know, pick. I don't think I had that many picks to make, to be honest with you. But I think Saber, you know, they gave me the opportunity. They saw some potential in me, obviously. And it was great to come there with the history of the team. They're known for, you know, forming drivers, you know, early in their careers. And that's something they've done extremely well for a long time. So I came there, and you know, obviously the organization was huge compared to Caterham. The factory down in Switzerland is state of the art, and you know, that was a big change. And then, unfortunately, my time in Saber was a little bit, you know, it was a lot better than Caterham, but still, also Saber at that time had financial issues, and we had some difficulties to sort of keep up with the competition. And my years in Saber were, you know, a lot better than Caterham, but they were still tough years, and mostly of the, you know, most seasons there we were towards the back of the grid. So it was, you know, it was good, but it was also tough because I felt many times we didn't really have a car to compete for points. You mentioned your highlight of your career at Caterham was on the grid at Melbourne. Surely there was a bigger highlight at Sauber. What would you say your biggest F1 highlight was? That is a good question. I think, you know, I scored some points, some good results, some good performances. I remember my first points I scored in Melbourne 2015, which was a big achievement because, you know, in some ways, yeah, for me that was a big achievement to just show that, yeah, I'm in Formula One, but I also score points in Formula One. So that was a big thing for me. I think probably my single best performance in Formula One, I would say maybe was Bahrain in my last year in 2018 when I scored the first points for Sauber in a long time. And that was a really good performance. I think I finished 9th that race, 8th or 9th. And then I think one of my very last races in F1 when I qualified 6th in Brazil, that's also something that I, you know, for me it was a very big highlight. I think I was the first car behind, you know, the big teams, and that was a cool moment. When did you realize that your Formula One career was coming to an end? It was sort of second half of that season in 2018. I thought that I had a good chance of staying, but then, you know, this whole thing that Kimi was leaving Ferrari happened, and Charles was going to replace him there. And at that time, Charles was my teammate. And then around that time, I got the information that they had signed Kimi to come to Alpha, And basically the way that team was at that time, the other seat was sort of Ferrari owned the other seat. So I knew the other seat that Charles had was going to be a Ferrari junior or Ferrari driver in that. So Kimi got signed in sort of my seat, and then I knew this is it, that's over. But it was in a way, you know, I never really got my F1 career to sort of get going. And at that time, I was pretty broken down in my confidence levels and everything. I had a tough time, and in some ways it was disappointing, of course, but at the same way I also felt like, okay, this is a chance for me to do something else and really, you know, find some new motivation. And I actually, like the same day as I got the information that I was going to get replaced, I called my manager, Aya, and I told him, we need to look at America, we need to look at IndyCar, that's where I want to go.
So tell me about that process, because you eventually signed with what was then called Aero Schmidt-Peterson, if I can remember correctly. Why that team? Why that situation? How'd that all come about?
So yeah, I'd been looking at IndyCar, you know, following IndyCar during my F1 career, and when the things happened, I spoke to my manager. We all wanted to pursue IndyCar. We didn't really have much connections in IndyCar. At that time, Kenny was not part of the project anymore, so we didn't have the natural connection from Kenny to America either. So I actually reached out to a friend in racing, Matt Howson, it's called. He's used to race. We used to race back in the day, and he's doing some, I think, managements now. And he put me in contact with Schmidt-Peterson, I think with Sam. I think it was Sam he put me in contact with. So I had actually the first conversation with Sam, and that's sort of how it went. Obviously, the circumstances was not ideal because the opportunity was there because of Robbie and his accident. So that was definitely, you know, not nice, but still, you know, Sam was looking at what to do with his team and what to do with his drivers, and I think it was a good fit for me to come in there and sort of get my first opportunity in IndyCar.
So when you first got in an IndyCar, drove it, was it an instant, did you click with it? Was it something, did the car fit your driving style, I guess I would ask?
I don't think so. I think I was very much in sort of the F1 driving style and sort of careful with the tires, careful with sort of your inputs. And for me, the first time in an IndyCar was a bit of a shock to the system. And I definitely didn't understand how to get lap time out of it at first. And really my full first year, I was struggling quite a bit with sort of getting the grips on how to drive an IndyCar. And so it was a bit of a process, definitely. I didn't come to IndyCar and put the world on fire from the first go. You know, it took me some time to figure it out and understand. And that's sort of the way I work as a person as well, and as a driver. I need to sort of understand how things work and get comfortable with it, and then, you know, then I can get out my potential and my skills, I feel.
So one highlight I looked at from the 2019 season,
I remember, you know, being in attendance watching the race, was the Indianapolis 500 in 2019. Now, obviously, it didn't end as a highlight, but if you look at your month of May in 2019, you qualified very well. I think you were in the 4th or 5th row. Your teammate, James Hinchcliffe, struggled to even qualify. You ran top 10 most of the race. You obviously had a bit of a mistake coming into the pits, but if you look at Scott Dixon last year, that happened to the best of them. Was there a specific... Did you feel like your Indianapolis was good, or did you feel like you had a good feel at Indianapolis in 2019?
Yeah, I do feel like that whole month was really successful. You know, it was my first try, and I had no idea how big the Indy 500 was. You know, I came here to IndyCar, and I knew about the Indy 500. I knew it was a big race, but I thought it was, you know, like any other big race that Monza or Monaco or these things. But this was just something completely different, and the way the 500 is, how long it is, with all the build-up, the qualifying weekend, and then, you know, everything that goes on. It was just so different. But I felt like I did really well that sort of first try. And like you said, I was running in the top 10 for most of the race, which I think was a great achievement as a rookie. And then, yeah, there in the second half of the race, I did that mistake and pit in, and learned a good lesson from that. But yeah, it was heartbreaking in a way, because I was on for a really good finish in my first try, but I was still proud of my sort of performance and effort that first month of May.
Towards the end of the season, it seemed like things kind of fell apart with you and the team. I remember you had some quotes towards the end of the year that you were really unhappy. I know you had to sit out a race, I think, because you had some commitments in the Formula One world because you were still a test driver. But it seemed like you were never really in consideration to stay at Aero McLaren SP. Talk through a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange year. I think the fact that I was still test driver for Alfa Romeo F1 team was not helping, because I sort of had one foot there and one foot here, and it was just a bit of a strange situation. And I think the year itself, we had, like we said, month of May was good. I had Barber, I had a good race, and obviously my Detroit podium was a big result for me. But overall, it was a bit too inconsistent and up and down. And then obviously missing a race there because I had to go to Europe and be standby in an F1 race. That didn't help my chances to stay with Arrow or Schmidt-Peterson. And obviously the following year also, when they were becoming McLaren and got bigger resources, I think the results I had done was not good enough either. So I don't blame them for doing that. I think there was potential there, and I think the people I worked closest with in the team saw that, and they were pretty sad to see me go. But I think if you look at the bigger picture, I can see why Zach and these guys that came in was like, we need some other driver. So yeah, I think that was fine, but I think there was definitely some potential there if you dug a bit deeper into my season and my sort of numbers.
Ganassi came next.
That would almost seem like you kind of, to put it really bluntly, you almost failed upwards. You went from a team that was building. Obviously, we know now Aero McLaren SP is one of the top teams. But at that time, they were still kind of mid-pack. You jumped to Chip Ganassi Racing, which has won championships, Indy 500s, regularly wins races. How did that come about?
How was it? I think I called Mike Hull. I think that was the first step. I called Mike Hull. I got his contact information. And I asked him, because I knew they were running two cars at the time, and I knew in the past they'd run more cars. So I just called up. Obviously, at that time, I had some sponsorship with me. So we had some good sponsors as well. And I just asked him, what are you guys looking at? And that was the same time as they closed down their Ford GT program. And that I knew about that as well. So I was like, that makes sense. And I spoke to Mike, and I think I went to see him as well. We sat down, and we got a good sort of connection. And I think also Mike is a good talent spotter, so I think he saw those sort of, I think he dug a bit deeper into my first season and actually saw, there's some good potential in this guy, so I think they definitely took a chance on me and sort of got me the seat there, but I don't think they expected the sort of performance we've had since joining.
Well, that's what was my next question, is that it seems like since you've gone to Ganassi, like 2020, not necessarily like a super highlight-filled year, but 2021, you won a couple of races, some in spectacular fashion, and it's just grown from there. What has clicked at Ganassi that didn't click at, say, Aero or Saber or Caterham?
I think my Formula One career, I think, was all about the cars that we're in. My confidence was not great, and it was just tough. F1 is tough that way, and that's one of the biggest reasons why, it's hard to look at F1 and say who's doing well or not, because it's so much about what car and team you're in. And that's one of the things why I was so motivated to come to IndyCar, because I knew that I had the talent. I know I had the skills. I'd shown that early in my career, but I never really got the chance to do that in Formula One. So that was one of the big motivations for me to come here. And then when I came here, when I got the opportunity with Ganassi, I really put my head down and worked really, really hard every day. I live here in Indianapolis. I went to the shop all the time. I built a really strong relationship with my engineer, Brad Goldberg, who has been with since I came to Ganassi, and still working with him now. He's still my race engineer. And that sort of relationship with him has been a big, big part of my success with Ganassi. But also, just working hard, being honest to myself and seeing, what weaknesses do I have, what do I need to work on, what do I need to improve on, and always, I don't want anyone to be able to say, this guy works harder than Marcus. I want to be like the guy that works the hardest, and I feel that's why every year I'm becoming better and better and better, because I try and just improve every year. And I feel like if you look at my stats in IndyCar, that's been the case. You look at the first year, second, third, every year is a steady improvement. And I think it's been good to see.
So let's get to May of 2022.
Did you go in thinking, I can win this race?
I did, yeah. I felt like, 21 was really my breakthrough year in IndyCar when I won. For me, when I won that first race in Detroit, it was a huge thing for me and my confidence. It was like 8 years or whatever since I won a race before that, so just winning there was just such a huge thing for me. And I feel like since that day, I've been a different driver, just driving with confidence. And because of that, going into the 2022 season, going into the month of May in 2022, I had a lot of confidence going there. And I felt like our cars were really good from the get-go in month of May. And I think we actually did the perfect month. Every session we were top 10 on the 8 car. I think top 8 even every session. We were always up there. We were always fast. We were always comfortable. We went through everything we wanted to do in the testing. We did a really good qualifying week. Like, we did everything to put ourselves in a position to be able to win the Indy 500. Then the Indy 500 is its own story. Like, everything can happen in the Indy 500, and we all know that. But we did put ourselves in a position where I went into race day thinking we can win this thing.
So the actual race day itself. Early in the race, I wouldn't describe you as dominant. You were there. I mean, I remember the beginning of the race, you were kind of running, I think, around 4th early on. What was the strategy that particular day? Because Scott and Alex seemed like they were just checked out from everybody else. Did you think you could hang with them?
I believe I could, yeah. I think, all Ganassi cars were very strong. I think from where I was starting, and also from my previous experience from the 500, it's I tried to push a bit too early in my previous times, and it bit me quite hard. I crashed out in 2020, had that closed pit in 21 that put me in the back. So, like, my goal and game plan for the race in 22 was just to put myself in a position when it's 30 laps to go, I'm there in the mix, ready to go for it. So that was sort of my game plan. So when actually the first half of the race, I was really happy running there in the top 5, just following along, not taking any risks, just following. And yes, Alex and Scott was really strong up front, but they were still not pulling away or breaking up the field. We were all in a row, let's say. So I was not too worried. Everything was going according to plan. I think the only thing that really messed things up a little bit was when we had that pit stop when Jimmy came into the box and I was leaving and I had to check up and I lost, I think, from P4 to P8. And that made things a little bit more difficult in the second half of the race. But I sort of managed to climb myself back into the top 5. So I was in a position with 25 to go that I could, go for it.
So, you were not the rabbit of the team, but you were there. As the race played out, we saw Alex kind of have what happened to Dixon the previous year. He got caught out by a yellow, lost his fuel pressure, had to go all the way to the back, made an emergency pit stop. Scott was speeding in the pits by whatever it was, half a mile an hour, just some ridiculously small margin. You have the 2 Aero McLaren SP cars ahead of you. You come out of the pits and do something that
in this era was incredible, is you just blew Felix and Pato away. I mean, and then you just were gone. I mean, how'd you do that?
Yeah, I think, obviously during the race, you're always tuning your car and sort of trying to, with tire pressures and with front wing and your tools in the car, we were tuning for that end of the race. And I felt like we were making the car better throughout the race. And then, with the things that happened, and I came out of the last stop and I saw, I was right behind the 2 McLarens. And I knew it's now or never, it's time to go. And I think pretty much from when I came out of the pits, I think I was flat pretty much the whole way till the finish line. Like, the car was so hooked up, and it was super fast. And I just let go of everything we had. I just went all in. And I think the key also was the way I timed the lappers or the fuel savers. They were not lappers. It was a couple of cars that was trying to save fuel, hoping for a caution. And I saw them, I remember coming out of the pits behind the 2 McLarens, and I saw further down the line that there is some cars that we're going to catch. And straight away when I saw that, I was thinking to myself, I need to get by so I catch the traffic first, because the way you run through the traffic can really win or lose you the race. And that's what happened. I got by Pato and Felix, catch these couple of cars, and went through them, and Pato and Felix just struggled to get through them. And that's when I got that gap of 3 seconds that I was then holding until yeah, the yellow.
I guess I'll ask this question. This is a bit cheeky. You did pass the very team that let you go. Did you think about that?
Not at the time, but I think.
But you have.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I've thought about that after. But like I said, I don't have any hard feelings, and I was happy they gave me the chance to come to IndyCar, so, and I don't blame them for letting me go. But I think they probably thought that, hey, this is the guy that we had the chance to continue with, and now he overtook us and won the 500. So I think they probably thought about it more than I did, I think.
Something I'm sure felt like you were thinking about it forever was that red flag. When, unfortunately, your teammate crashes, brings out the red flag with 2 laps to go, and you have to shoot it out with Pato. What were you thinking when you're sitting in that car? Because you had won your first race because a car had just completely melted on the red flag. You were probably more well aware of that than anyone else in the field, the possibilities and the risks of that while leading the race. What was that like?
It was really tough. Like, obviously I had that 3-second gap, and I could see that Pato was, he was catching me by a sniff every lap. So he was not going to catch me unless something happened. So I sort of had the race covered, and then the red flag happens. And I think for me, first it was like, okay, it's red flag, it is what it is. But then I saw it was Jimmy, and that sort of lost my mind a bit. And I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? Like, how can my teammate crash when I'm leading? Like, and I was questioning a lot of things and swearing a lot and everything. But there again, Brad and Mike O'Gara, who was on my radio, they were really good at sort of calming me down and be like, hey, this is your day, you're the fastest one, you're gonna win this, like, just focus. And they helped me sort of get back in my zone again. And I think also for myself, I was upset for a bit, and then I just sort of went into myself and was just starting to tell myself, like, hey, this is your day, like, you can do it. This is just another challenge that you have to overcome to become a 500 champion. And I just started to tell myself that, and also seeing myself doing the last 2 laps. I made up a plan in my head, so I was sitting in the car thinking about that, and sort of just planned for it, and just made a plan that I knew if I do this plan, it's going to give me the best chance to win. If I'm going to win or not, I don't know, but it's going to give me my best chance. And I don't know, I just sort of turned it around and saw the opportunity and not the sort of chance of losing it.
When you went, the key moment I thought that finally
Ended up winning you the race was when you and Pato were side by side going into turn 1. He lifted, you didn't. Were you ever going to lift? Was there a single possibility that Pato O'Ward was going to pass you to win that 500?
I mean, there was a possibility he was going to pass me, but he was going to have to go around the outside there in 1, because I was not going to lift, and I was going to hold my foot down and let him go around the outside. And I don't know how that would have worked, So I think people have said different things about what Pato should or should not have done, but I think for both of us, it was probably the right thing, because otherwise we might have both been in the fence there, was my feeling. So, but yeah, again, it's just so small margins. It's crazy to think about how small margins there are, but it was just my day.
And it was your day. You crossed the line, you win
The Indy 500. You ironically get a yellow that saves you rather than hurts you. This is something that like 70 people have experienced. You're one of a very select few. When you cross that line, what is that feeling? Can you describe that?
For me, it was an explosion, really, of emotions. Like, it was just, it's hard to put into words what it was, but it was the best I can say. It was like an explosion inside of me. And also, like, I had so many feelings that I remember I was just screaming out loud for like a full minute or two, just going the lap around. I was just screaming, like I didn't scream something specific, just screaming out for like a full lap. And I completely blew my voice as well, because then, the next day when I was going to do interviews and stuff, I had no voice or anything, because I'd just been screaming for like 2 minutes straight. And it was just, a feeling of just, of course, happiness, but also like, it was crazy. It was very, very emotional. Yeah.
One of the, I would say, emotional things, one of the emotional moments from outside the cockpit was your now wife, Iris. She was celebrating like she had won the race too. That was something that will always stick with me about your win. Obviously, you've now gotten married. what is that relationship like in your life? Because I think that was something that I really picked up on is that's a special relationship for both of you, because that kind of celebration doesn't happen if you don't care.
No, for sure. And I mean, she's been my biggest supporter and biggest, always by my side. And we met just around that first win of mine in IndyCar. And, since I met her, I've been pretty good. So, I got to thank her a lot for that. She's definitely made me a better person and a better driver as well. Because I think if you're happy and if you're like on the right path in your life outside the car, it's going to help you so much in the car as well. And her support and being there by my side every single time, it's just helped me become a better driver and a better person. So yeah, I got to thank her a lot for that. And also, going back to that, celebrating with her, but also my family was there, my manager was there, my backer since I was 15 was there. Like, there were so many people that day that had been so important for my career that was there that day, which was pretty crazy that like all of them were there and we won it. So it was just a perfect story, to be honest.
Since the Indy 500,
really, it seems since Detroit, you've been a different Marcus Ericsson. I mean, I've touched on it a couple times when we've talked in the past, but one of the things you mentioned as a big factor in your change has been, I guess, a self-evaluation of your mental health. It's something that's important to you. I mean, we have a helmet there I think we're going to talk about here in a second, but what got you thinking I need to work on my mind as well as my body and my drive?
I think the mind is sort of everyone's superpower in a way. It's you can be strong in the gym or strong with different things, but your mind is what decides a lot of things. And I think especially in sport, in top sport, it's a lot about the one that's the strongest mentally. I think in my career, the mental side has been one of my biggest strengths, because there's been a lot of tough days and tough years and tough seasons that many people would probably have given up or sort of just not kept on going. But I've always been very determined and worked very hard and believed in myself. But again, I always look at things how to become better, and I think the mental side for me is such an important thing. And I think winning the 500 last year, I think that mental challenge I had there, it doesn't get much bigger than that. That red flag, trying to close out all the emotions and all the thoughts that's trying to get into your head. I think that mental challenge that I've managed to handle showed how important the mental side is. And I think that helped me think about it more, like how can I improve that even more? How can I become even stronger mentally? And that's why I went out to try and find a coach that could work with me. And I found this guy in Sweden called Stig Wiklund, that I started to work with, has been very successful with many other athletes, but also business persons and actors and all kinds of professions that he's working with over the years. And we've started working this winter, and we work like on a weekly basis. He's in Sweden and I'm here in America, but we do video sessions and stuff like that. And it's been really interesting. I think, like I said, I think your mind is your superpower, and you need to be clever to use it to your advantage. And I think that's what I'm trying to do.
So tell us about May, and tell us about the helmet that
you're running at the GP and what that means and how it relates to what we just talked about.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, because I started with this winter. I started to do some stuff with Riley here in Indianapolis. I've been in Indy now for 5 years, so I feel like I'm getting stronger and stronger connection with the community here. And obviously Riley and what they do is just amazing. And I've got the chance to see some people there, some kids there. And we came up with this idea of making a charity helmet for Riley. And it was actually a friend of mine who came up with the idea to have some kids' paintings and do a design on it. And that's how this came up. So we did this design of four different paintings from 4 different kids. And what's really cool is that month of May is the World Mental Health Awareness Month, where Riley is putting a lot of effort into that. So that's why we said, okay, let's do it for month of May for the Indy GP, and put some, use my platform to put some focus on that. And I think it's, first of all, the helmet looks amazing, and I think it's such an important and great cause. And also, I will auction the helmet out after the race, so all the proceeds will go to Riley and their hospital and for Riley kids.
That's a great thing, Marcus, and it's a nice looking helmet.
It's cool, huh?
We're looking forward to seeing that here.
Hopefully in victory lane.
There we go. Now,
it seems like you have so much stability in your life right now. You like you said, just married, Indy 500 winner, leading the championship, a lot of positives. One thing that is uncertain right now is your future. You've had all this success with Ganassi Racing. I sit here as a guy, just some humble YouTuber on the outside, and I look at the situation with your contract coming up, and I say, how could Marcus drive anywhere but Ganassi? Tell me what your thought process is.
Yeah, I mean, I love where I am, and I think, the results speak for themselves. But yeah, I'm in a contract year, and I need to sort of keep delivering on track. I think that's my main goal. I have my management, they're working on the other side of things, and I know, we're speaking to Ganassi all the time. So yeah, we just have to wait and see. I think, it's an important year, it's an important month we're coming into now. I need to focus on that and have my head in that, because then other things are going to work out. So that's sort of how I see it. Would it be nice to have everything sorted now? Yeah, it would be nice, but it's not the case. I just have to go out and continue to deliver on track, and that's sort of where my mind is around that.
So the big one's coming up.
Your defense of your Indianapolis 500. Not many people, I've said this a few times, but not many people get to do this. Very few have ever repeated in Victory Circle. The last person to do that was Elio Castroneves in 2001 and 2002. What's your mindset going into this month of May? Can you win it?
I can win it for sure. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think so. I think for us as a team, we know we're going to be strong. We were so strong last year, and I believe we've been even stronger this year with the stuff we've done over the winter. I do think the competition is going to be tougher than ever, because McLaren is already last year were an extremely tough competitor to us, and I think they're going to be even stronger. Their lineup is amazing. But also, Penske, they're going to figure it out sooner rather than later around this place. You got to think so, at least. Andretti's looked really strong this year. So I think the competition is tougher than ever. So we need to bring our A game. But I think with the way we are, the way we operate as a team, the way I drive at the moment, my confidence level, we're definitely going to be there, and we're definitely going to aim to go back-to-back. There's no doubt about it.
Marcus, it has been a pleasure. This has been
a great conversation. I hope it's been great for you.
It's been good.
Thank you guys for watching this. I hope you've appreciated it. I really thought this was important to do, to talk to and to have the opportunity to talk to the current Indianapolis 500 champion. So thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Indy 500 month content throughout the month. It's going to be hard to top this, though. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.